Of course, Sama stole the thunder of my presentation, but nevertheless, it was a good introduction for us as we move on to presenting what the value of dashboards and how do you actually measure performance within a digitized age like ours. So my presentation is going to be twofold. The first half of the presentation would kind of look at presenting to you what's the software landscape out there in terms of what are tool sets that are available globally for folks, not like Babco, not like SR, who have some tools themselves, but for a majority of people who are new into using HSE software, what's the market like and what's the offering. And my second bit of the presentation would go into presenting what's GE doing with performance management and performance measurement within the HSE space. So that's what I'll cover briefly over the next 20 minutes or so. All right, another view of the dashboard. Sama showed us a lot of her pictures of her KPIs that they measured in Babco, but here is an example of a snapshot that really shows up on the eye. How is the site performing on some specific indicators, right? So this is an example of one of our customers who make optical lenses, but a very simplified version of how they're actually doing. And that's what we perhaps want to get in front of our leadership, right? A quick snapshot of how things are running within the shop floor on managing HSE is what we want to actually get out to the leadership. A lot of been spoken already about it. Today, HSE management is a very resource-intensive function and a resource-intensive job. In a lot of places, it's managed by a single person who's multitasking, running around, doing a lot of stuff himself or herself, right? And added to that is it's very tough to get good talent who have the right background and exposure in the space that we want them to be in. A lot of us still do it manually, which is we still spend a lot of time putting in data, pulling in reports when the leadership review happens, which is a lot of what we do. And I like a few people like Babco, SR, and a few other companies that I know of have some tools that are internally developed that really sets them off in terms of managing HSE information and data. And like we also saw, a lot of the conference discussions has been about how do you engage leadership. And on the first day, the CEO's panel, we clearly could find that people are interested and are on the line of measuring performance and ensuring that they are on the safe side. One of the other aspects that I noted when I was doing some research back is that you may be a company that has 10, 20, 40 sites, but unless standardization across happens in all these sites, you're not assured of great performance with respect to your HSE. And if you look at this chart that I pulled from a report that Vedantics did, there's still a lot of scope for standardization to happen across a single company as well, which leaves a gap for us to think about how do we get standardization across the board. And the challenges we see today, of course, are varied business operations, evolving global regulations because we're going across the world and putting up plants and we've got to comply with them. The need for an effective communication tool and real-time business intelligence. So with these aspects in mind and not looking at the other holistic HSE challenges that we discussed earlier today and yesterday, my question to you guys is that, are you comfortable with facing these challenges with a manually drawn system, right? And in most cases, I have seen people vouching that, yeah, I think it's not going to be sustainable to run manually with data information without a system. So of course, what's the systems approach? Having your programs developed, having people outlined with clear expectations, establishing a rhythm for metric reporting, and implementing throughout training and tools that you do across the board from leadership to shop floor people. And here's another snapshot that I've kind of gathered in research. Over 65% of the companies, a global company list that was surveyed, have been using an HSE software over the last 2+ years, right? Which means that technology advancement in HSE has already caught on and is going at rapid paces. So, with that, what's the landscape like? And here's a very interesting snapshot of what I would use to let people know how technology has transformed, not only in the HSE space, but how has it gone about in the technological aspects of IT. Way back in the 80s, late 80s, we were used to software being loaded on your respective computers, right? And you would access it only on your machine. That transformed in the late 90s into a client-server based system where you would install that software on your servers within a company, and users within that company would access that, right? You didn't need to put it on your laptop or desktop. From 2000 onwards, 2010 onwards, the technological space has evolved into offering you what is called a web-based software as a service solution, which means that you no longer need to have a physical hardware or a software installed on your premises at all. You plug into a system that's hosted completely in a very safe and secure manner and start to use with it as though it's your internal tool. What does it do is that it really changes the paradigm. We in HSE always have a challenge with IT helping us to do what we want them to do, right? And with IT resources getting more expensive, it's no longer a proposition for internally hosted solutions to kind of exist today. So software as a service is a model where you just plug in, use it with minimal upfront capital expenditure, and pay as you use. You don't like the system in a couple of years, you are at a position where you can throw it out and look for a system that has better quality than what you look for, and translate or migrate that data into the new system, right? So it's just plug and play. I was talking to Dr. Ganeshan over lunch after we met. It's the same thing. You are secure of your data as though you are not aware that it's hosted somewhere outside. The data is as good as yours. It's not as good as yours, it's yours. So that's a new transformation in IT technology that's today catching up across the world, and it's really making IT available to HSE people at a very affordable cost and returns as well. Fine, of course. Are there players in the market? Yes. There are thousands of players in the market who offer software solutions within the HSE space, right? So if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, there are specific people who offer specific solutions, like chemical management, like industrial hygiene related assessments and application, like risk assessments, HAZAR. But as you go up the ladder, are there people who offer an integrated solution? There are, but there are fewer than the bottom of the pyramid that you see. So depending on what you guys need from an IT perspective, there are tons of solutions available in the marketplace for you to research and pick. So again, here's another data set of what people have kind of vouched for using HSE software. And number one stands out is managing your incidents, where you provide a platform for reporting, recording, investigating, and corrective action tracking. So that's the number one aspect of why people want to use a solution other than what's already listed down there, which are plenty now. And the second aspect, why do people use it? What are the drivers? The number one driver, of course, like you see here, is the aspect of improving your HSE performance, right? It's not like you bring in a software and your HSE performance increases by itself. That's not what I meant here. It clearly implies that once you have the data in, you're able to do a lot of the mining aspects, a lot of the trending aspects where you kind of outline what are your hot spots. Where is it that you're going to focus your resources on? Because that's an area where you have problems today, right? On manual tracking, that's very difficult to understand. We spend a lot of time just reporting out and pulling metrics, but here is where the software will really help you with the data mining and the analytics that are associated with it. And if you look at the chart, one of the 6th points that are not put on the bullets is, of course, the fact that it's also to reduce operational costs, right? Why and how? If productivity increases, you no longer need a team of 5 people to pull data and sort data and analyze data. The software does it at a click. To what Samar's point also was that you just open it up, you have all the reports, trending charts right available on your face that you can use offhand. So with that, I will kind of jump into the case example I wanted to present with how GE manages HEC performance, right? And being a veteran within the GE circles, I know this from experience as well as I would call indulgence, because I was involved in a lot of the metric development within GE as well. A key thing, a differentiator in GE is that number one, EHS is not responsible for safety, right? We all heard that. We all aspire that it's got to be within everyone's blood. GE does the performance management of the system through plant managers and service managers, right? So what do they measure on? Very simple CTQs. CTQs are critical to quality, is the Six Sigma term that GE uses. They are very clear things. Number one, no mission compliance, preventing injury illnesses, reducing waste and emissions, assessing all impacts, eliminating unreasonable risks, right? So the unreasonable is a catch. So because you never can eliminate all risks, we've heard that over the last couple of days. And they've defined very clear, simple, measurable metrics as a gateway to understand how systems perform within GE, right? And we're all familiar with all these terminologies. The other aspect, being a global company across 125 countries, they set an expectation to have these standards implemented across the remotest of the sites in the world, right? Take a site in the Philippines, take a site in Vietnam, they will have the same operating rigor like a site in the US would have, right? And how is that possible? They are possible because of some of the tool sets kind of GE has developed, which is operational leaders being responsible at heads with reviews, metrics visibility using the dashboards, and importantly, digitizing the entire system. So this is how GE looks at HSE data, and then how they do it is what I'll run you over the next couple of slides. Number one, at a site level, every finding that comes out of audits are tracked to closure, right? Using a simple tool called the audit tracking system. That, of course, also translates into a lot of the metrics that you can see on the right-hand chart, where looking at the chart, you know electrical safety is the issue at the site here, right? And the site can focus on looking at what those aspects are of that. Again, for every incident, near miss, it's recorded, it's investigated, and again dealt with from an analytics perspective, right? No brainer there. Here's the beauty of what GE does differently. They have a review called the Session E, and Session E is a review where the corporate team and the business teams of GE go around the world and get every site within the GE network to present to them what their past performance was with respect to HSE and what are their plans for the next year, right? And importantly, this session is presented by the plant manager or the service manager of that specific site. It's not me who used to go and present for the site I was a leader for. It was my plant manager or the CEO of the site who presented, which meant that he had to have that ingrained in him to lead and drive HSE at the site. And let me also tell you, there have been cases where within a session E, plant managers have been fired for non-conformance to the set expectations that GE had. And here's the other pull. We just don't believe in data, numbers, right? So the personal aspect of session E really catches on as to what are the real challenges that the site is facing and what have they done about it, right? So it's just not that you had 100 findings, you closed 98 findings, and you still had 2 findings. Number looks great, But if you look at those two findings, they would ask you, why the hell was that not closed? Right? What did you do to not have that get closed? So that's the real rhythm of how GE manages HSE performance, where they make it personal and they make it driven by data as well. I got 3 minutes? Yes, sir. Here's another snapshot of if I was a site leader, how do I drill down my departmental managers, my departmental supervisors to engage in HSE? Here's a tool that GE uses called the Ops Metrics, or it's also called the Supervisory Metrics. So the way it works is that GE corporate sets goals and objectives, like how BAPCO does every year, and then that goals are drilled down to the businesses, and then each site also sets their own goals and objectives. So my way of drilling down the goals and objectives to every leader within my site is by using the Ops Metrics, where I measure their performance and contribution into the overall goals of the company, right? I'm not too sure if the screenshot is very visible, but I measure them on like 6, 7, 8 parameters, right? Injury illnesses, training, inspections, health and safety reviews, which is the management of change, technical management, PPE compliance, and contributions within the safety meetings. So, very simplified ways of setting expectations to your managers in a site and getting them to engage on it, and having this dashboard presented to the site leader in their bi-weekly or monthly meetings that they have as leadership, right? A great way to engage site level. So here are some snapshots of what GE cockpits look like. Cockpit, of course, are business specific. When I mean business specific, GE has 6, 8 businesses: aviation, transportation, lighting, appliances, healthcare. So each of them has their own cockpit views. And of course, there is a cockpit view for the entire company as well, that the corporate team and the chairman look at it on a regular basis. So these are snapshots, these are not the whole cockpit. The whole cockpit looks a very beautiful aviation drawing that I might want to kind of pull up and show. If you look at what it contains, very clearly defining what the goal is, right? And the usual red, yellow, green, indicating where we are on the goal. And of course, looking at how each of the segments within the business is performing. So you have engineering, you have field services, sales, supply chain, technology groups reported here. This is live data for a specific business in GE that I pulled. And if you click on the plus marks against each of the sub businesses, you would have the drill down into the site level data, right? So very clearly helping leadership understand where is it that they have issues getting reported. Another leading lagging indicator chart, of course talking about recordable rate, DFW, near misses, first aid concerns. A view of what gets measured on the audit and finding closure rates. GE has a metric that for every compliance or regulatory finding, they have a 30-day closure rate, 100% defined. So if you don't meet that, you would get pulled up on the company's cockpit, where you would need to put in a clear answer as to why that was missed. And for every other finding which is non-regulatory, it's a 180-day closure rate, which also means they've got to be 95% and plus on those numbers. And another view of the dashboard cockpit on your right-hand side is a chart that tells you what is the risk of a few of the sites listed here missing the 30-day mark. And the reviews automatically start with the calls get done with each of site leaders and reasoning as to what are they doing to close that finding within the time, because these are commitments that GE has made to the stakeholders, and they are responsible for ensuring compliance to the net. I will take a minute now. So the last piece, of course, is the framework, where GE has today condensed their 21 health and safety plus 6 environmental programs into 6 solid elements, and they again measure compliance to those programs using the framework scorecard, And here again, each of the site is required to go and assess their own compliance to that, as well as every second year they get audited by a business team in terms of setting what the baseline on the framework scorecard is like. And lastly, of course, we see from what performance G has shown, the Gensuite tool set has been deployed across G for like 15 years from now, 96 onwards, and digitization has played a key role in helping GE standardize their programs across the 2,000 sites they have in the world, as well as helping them bring down their clear recordable rates, their frequency rates to numbers that have not been kind of familiar to them earlier on. So with that, lastly, these are some of the tools that GE today uses across all their facilities in terms of how they digitize their HSE programs, right from compliance assurance, incident management training, sustainability, environment, safety, and so on and so forth. They have deployed all these programs. And importantly, all these programs are feeding the cockpit. The cockpit is not a manual data entry job. The data that you have within these applications is what drive the cockpit numbers, right? With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you a lot for the time, patience, and the opportunity, and I thank the organizers as well for having me here.